Today I'm going to be making the basic sweet white bread. Though I've made a video of this recipe a couple of months ago, but I've got a lot of questions about a couple of things I did not mention in the previous video. So I've decided to make a longer version of this video in order to answer most of the questions. And the first thing I would like to address is the yeast. To make sure the yeast is alive and active, it's advisable to proof it. And this is done by dissolving some sugar and yeast in warm water, then leave this to stand for a couple of minutes. After about 5 to 10 minutes, the yeast should have become bubbly, just like this. If this does not happen to your yeast, it's either the yeast is no longer active or the water you used is too hot. In that case, the yeast is no longer going to be useful for making the bread. Now let's measure out the flour. If you are going to be using the measuring cup, in order to get an accurate result, the first thing to do is to fluff off the flour using a whisk. Then use a small bowl or a cup to scoop the flour into the measuring cup. Now use the straight edge of a knife to level it up. And that is how to measure the flour. Let's do this one more time. I have also provided a link in the description box below, just in case you might prefer the measurement by weight. So to this flour, I'm going to be adding some salt and sugar. Mix this together and create a well at the center. Then add the proofed yeast, add the milk, the eggs, some melted butter, and vinegar. Then gradually mix this together until a soft and sticky dough is formed. I've also been asked about the reason why I added vinegar. It's just to create an acidic environment which helps the yeast to work better, and the vinegar can be replaced with vitamin C powder, just as I used in my previous video. Now transfer this dough to a lightly floured surface and begin to knead. You can sprinkle a little more flour when the dough begins to stick on the surface, but don't overdo this, otherwise the dough will become hard and the resulting bread will be very dense. After about 10 to 12 minutes of kneading, the gluten in the dough would have become strengthened and the dough will become smooth and elastic. And a good way to test is to gently stretch the dough. If it's well kneaded, it should not tear easily. Another way is to press the dough with your fingertip, and the depression will slowly fill in. If the depression remains there, then you have to knead again for a couple of minutes. Now grease a large bowl with about a tablespoon of oil. Then place the dough into the bowl and turn it around to coat the old dough with the oil. Now cover the bowl with a plastic wrap or a lid and allow the dough to rise until it's doubled or almost tripled in size. And this should take about 1 to 1.5 hours, depending on how warm your kitchen is. So the dough is well risen now, and I'm going to punch it down to remove the trapped hair. And I'm going to be transferring this to a flat work surface again. Now I'm going to be dividing this dough into 4 equal parts. If you want bigger loaves, you can actually divide into 2 or 3 parts. But each time I do that, my bread comes out too brown on the outside before it cooks on the inside. So I just prefer to divide it into 4. Now take this dough one at a time and knead it for a couple of seconds just to get out as much hair as possible. Then shape the dough into a loaf by pushing it into an oval shape until it reaches the length of your pan. Now grease the baking pan with either butter, margarine or oil. Then sprinkle some flour over it and tilt the pan until it's well coated with the flour. You can now spill out the excess flour if there's any. Or better still, you can just use a good cooking spray for this. Now place the loaves inside the pan and cover it with a kitchen towel. Then leave it to rise for an additional 30 to 40 minutes until it's doubled or almost tripled in size again. It's now time to bake the bread. I've actually preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and while preheating the oven I added a pan with water, and this water will help to steam up the oven, which in turn will give the dough enough time to rise before the crust is formed. Now arrange the loaves in the oven and bake for about 20 to 30 minutes. To check if the bread is done, simply insert a skewer into the middle of the bread. If it comes out clean, then the bread is done. If otherwise, you can just cook it for about 5 or 10 more minutes. Now rub some butter over the surface of the bread while it's still very hot, and this will give the bread a shiny, soft and tender crust. Then allow the bread to cool completely before serving. I've also gotten a lot of questions from my Nigerian friends if this is agege bread. I like to say this is not a recipe for agege bread, but you can actually pass it for agege bread because it's really soft, it's chewy and it's sweet. And it will even stay the same way the next day. I hope I've been able to answer most of your questions. If you have more questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you all for joining me again today, and I'm going to talk to you shortly. Enjoy.